Hi, guys. Welcome to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. This is Vevna Forrow. Yeah, let's get started. Welcome back. So, I was talking about, age in terms of the Lit Mag journal world or even writing in general, starting publication or trying to get published. It's something, again, I'll reiterate, you can do it at any age. If, you want an example or you want to listen back to the episode, totally give it a quick listen. And for this episode, I want to cover something that I sort of ran into, and I'm sure a few other, publishers and even like self-publishers run into this. So, how do you get into bookstores or physical bookshop locations? So, yeah, this is something I personally am unaware if any of my work or even Dippy has ever been shelved. But I did, when we started, a year after, contacting all kinds of bookshops all over the country, different states, even back in my hometown, and Barnes and Noble and a few others. So what some did, they had, a form that you fill out, and they have to, basically assess whether the publication is appropriate for their shop. Some places, look at samples, photos, or a preview link that you have and that they can flip through. And and then they also look at the bookshop discount that you have. So the place that we used to publish, for our series, which I mentioned a couple episodes back, they had it used to be different, the discount amounts. So now it's like a 40% discount, 50% discount for bookshops that you can click on. That affects your overall listing price too. And then there was, I think in the prior, there was a 30% discount, but they changed it. So yeah, it was different than the 40-50% discount options for bookstores. So yeah, and those were through the Ingram network, by the way. And yeah, so I reached out to all, as many as possible. I created a list of them and just start emailing, and contacting them. And the main thing that came up repeatedly was are they in the Ingram network? And I said yes. So I did see, Ingram network orders across the past couple years with our past issues, our legacy issues, as I call them, our initial 5 or so. We're doing the relaunch. So actually, we had 6 actually go out. We did a reboot of issue 1. So actually, that's a correction. And and I, at some point in time, cleaned up and added spine text on the series. So anyways, yeah, so they have to be, a majority of bookshops only order from the Ingram network. There are some places, if they really want your book or publication, that they'll, of course, order it. Some bookshops I've seen their websites, they specifically state, we do not order from Amazon anything. And someone had a huge banner one time I came across, and yeah. So the Ingram network is if you're really keen on getting into physical locations, you want to make sure, you have, as part of the Ingram network, that it has an ISBN and, the barcode. And if it's a series issue publication, again, you want, it's ideal to have both an ISSN, the series number identification, and then an ISBN. And yeah, you can listen back to those episodes on all of that. But so I, again, had no way to tell from orders that we had, across the years of who exactly ordered them when they were showing the Ingram network. Now, yeah, I wish that was different. It'd be cool to be told, hey, we're carrying your issues and stuff like that. A lot of, when you get something physically shelved, I think it's a cool experience, But I did something with my dad, for example, in terms of a test. I was like, hey, Dad, I wonder if any of these bookshops that I contacted, whether they actually shelved anything. And he ended up calling one based here just as a test, my name and Dippy, but they didn't have anything, unfortunately. I did, contact them. They said they would, see if it's appropriate fit or not. And also, of course, we are listed, when you submit to the Ingram Network, you're listed in the online database search of places and shops. Just like physical orders, they'd have to be requested in if they haven't already, shelved or ordered copies of it. But yeah, and then so my dad helped me out there. He was like, I don't know, I felt odd if I was calling in, to check on that. But I did have some calls with Barnes and Noble and some shops like locally. And what they did on the phone was like they have a specific address for like identification address for emailing about those types of inquiries, like book shelving and getting publications into the physical shops. Unfortunately, like when I contacted about 2 times for the nearest one, they ended up giving me like a wrong identification number address, and I was just like, So I would say I'm not aware if, we've been shelved anywhere, but, who knows, it's possible. It's possible that we are in a location. I didn't call back every single location that I, reached out to. Obviously, I think they would have told us, right, if we were shelved in a space or something. I just wonder where some of the Ingram Network orders were from, or, some places, Anyways, so getting into bookshop locations, Barnes & Noble, and it's not easy by any means. It takes a lot of legwork. You really have to contact, reach out, network with others, and it's a very tough process, but you can do it. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll get shelved and stuff with our, restructuring, but I don't know. And it's not always necessary for, a zine or magazine to, necessarily be physically shelved all the time, but there are I've seen some local coffee shops, some smaller shops, totally have like these fun shelves, in their space where they shelve books, things for others to read while they're, waiting or just eating a croissant or a bagel. I don't know what your guys' favorite like coffee shop food is. I love, I totally have a sweet tooth for sure. And cappuccino. I remember when I used to go to the Half Price bookstore back in my home state. I was there quite a bit all the time with my parents. We took a lot of trips there, just, reading and things and checking out comic books and stuff. And I loved fact books, and I was in the YA area quite a bit, the young adult area, reading books and, the science section even. I remember one time we got like a cappuccino, and that was really fun. And and probably at some point in time I got like from some places I got bagels, or from some coffee shops as I got older, try chocolate chip muffins and stuff. So anyways, bookshops. Back to bookshops. Sorry, I can go on about like food and snacks sometimes, and I've written like food poetry for sure. When I started on the Instagram community, I haven't written a food poem in forever. I had a spaghetti one. I had some flying donut ones or something. By flying donut ones, I mean like the food, like some motion art mixed with the poetry and some reels and stuff. But those are much older. Those would take some digging for me to find again. Anyways, bookshops. So yeah, it's definitely possible to get your publication in. Again, you just want to make sure you have those key items I mentioned earlier. Some places totally I do, if the book isn't available anywhere else, I'm sure they do, order it wherever it's available if they really want to have it shelved. But typically, most places aren't going to accept it if it's not in the Ingram Network, and a lot of places need a minimum of a 40% discount is what I've seen. The higher the discount, of course, better for bookshops, for choosing that discount for them on the back end. I don't know what that looks like on other platforms and stuff. Blurb had that, too, as an example. I'm sure other places have a similar setup for choosing that. And, for discount options and things like that for bookstores in the event they do order and pick it up from the Ingram Network. So, I know a lot of poets and writers struggle with that, but I had some friends, even in the community, I recalled they, carried a book with them, one of their publications, and just like visited a couple bookshops and stores and they ended up getting it shelved, so sometimes you have to go in person, or sometimes you have to, you can start reaching out via email and go from there, and visit the ones in your local area. Start there if you're looking into getting shelved. I'm definitely going to keep trying, by the way, guys, so we'll see. I'm going to see if we can get shelved in any space or anything like that, because I think it would be cool. It's totally possible we were, and someone, didn't, let us know or notify us. Some places were just like, yeah, we'll look into it and see. But I didn't get, a confirmation back or anything on all my requests, or inquiries, I should say, when I was, contacting others and stuff. So, yeah, you def have to network, and it takes time. Some poets absolutely, I've seen they do cool table events inside bookshops and stuff, and I think from there you could really maybe talk or chat to the staff, when they're available, just briefly on that whole, the contact information, and grab that and stuff, for reaching out about, getting into locations. I never knew they had a specific ID address for each place and stuff. It's a distinct, I think it had numbers in it and stuff. I can't remember. But for Barnes & Noble, I'm sure other places have a similar process. They have dedicated, individuals over that, selecting books for the shelves and things like that. But who knows? Yeah, maybe one day we'll get, Dippity's work shelved, or maybe I'll even get my work shelved somewhere and I'll be aware of it. But, it's, I think it's cool, to have your work in physical locations. I know a lot of bookshops and stuff closed, throughout the years. And I think, libraries, bookshops, and things like that, they are so vital today. I know a lot of us do online reading and things like that, but I grew up going to bookshops and libraries, and I really, I've always been really fond of that. I feel like books are so important. I was totally a bookworm growing up. My dad knows this, my parents, my mom knows this. I had a bookshelf, from end to end with all the books I was reading over the years. I don't have that anymore, but I had one that I really loved, and I organized it all by series, everything from Animorphs to Kay Applegate, James Dashner, the Maze Runner trilogy, Divergent, and I had a bunch of fact books and almanacs growing up, and all kinds of young adult series as well, and I had a couple Goosebump books, and some fun series too, some pirate themed ones, and I recall, and so I really loved dystopia books at one point in time as well, and so anyways, just sharing. So sometimes I just share personal memories on here too. So unfortunately I can't share with you a successful story about getting into a bookshop or a specific location. But you definitely, again, have to reach out. You have to keep contacting others. I took a break and stuff, and from that, and we're doing a relaunch and stuff. So we'll see. We'll see if it's possible to get any of the zines shelved. One day. And, you can even contact some places internationally, too. That might be interested in picking up your series if they can order it, through the Ingram network or internationally, I don't know. Again, I'd recommend just starting locally and branching out, the neighboring states and things like that. There are quite a few places that are strict to only, being from that specific area. So, I'd even reached out to Canada and some other bookshops there and stuff, and they were like, unfortunately we predominantly have Canadian-based authors and series or publications with Canadian writers and things like that. So I think it helps when you have if you have let's say you have a couple team members, and we had a team member who was based out of Australia. She also, I think, had looked into it a little bit. But I think cost is very different, internationally and things like that, but it's totally possible, So I'll circle back to this whole getting into some U.S. bookshops, maybe even some, elsewhere, maybe Canada one day, but I will make it a to-do list item for me, and I will totally share if we ever get shelved in a bookshop location or something like that. And who knows, I may take a photo standing by it and share with you guys. I think that'd be fun. But yeah, don't give up, it's not impossible to get shelved, but it is very, very hard. I know, not everyone, and, some friends of mine and stuff, not everyone's been able to get shelved or things like that. But I do know some of the community who have, really done a lot of networking, a lot of events, and they got shelved in quite a few locations of where they live. So it takes time. You have to be persistent and keep going at it. So, eventually I'm going to circle back to those places and tell them we relaunch, have a new look and stuff and see what happens. You never know. So, yeah. Again, we have to be in the Ingram network and stuff like that. I don't know if we're going to continue submitting to the Ingram network for our zine series or the relaunch, but obviously that would be preferred if we want bookshops to order from us. What we do at Dippity going forwards, I'm not sure yet. This is all, TBA. But we may, do some different publications that are directly, to the Ingram network. And, outside of our relaunch of that series. So it may be strictly just, placed in a couple online bookshops or online ordering locations rather than the Ingram network. So it's not always absolutely necessary to be part of the Ingram network unless you're really, again, keen on getting into a bookshop or location physically. Because every place I contacted was like, you have to be. So, submitting, when I submitted, by the way, PS guys, so when I submitted to the Ingram network, when I chose that expanded global distribution option, obviously, the amount you get back is way reduced. And also the listing price. Some places, they have the listing price change based on that, on your discount selection and distribution and stuff. Some places, on the other hand, they have, there are some, international POD places or, where you can publish, and they have a distribution option, but they have a upfront fee instead. So you just want to be careful. If you're a self-publisher and you don't really mind someone else's being the publisher of it, then, some are, you may want to go with that. Or they usually have an option where you can just place yourself as the publisher, but some of those places don't have expanded distribution beyond some of the platforms. So you want to just research very carefully, read, what options you're selecting before, submitting something or choosing something. You want to be 100% sure, obviously. So, I hope this helps you. I was just sharing my experience a little bit with, the whole getting into bookshops, bookstores experience. So I haven't personally, but it's possible that some, pieces of published work or, landed elsewhere in shops and maybe libraries. I don't know. But I totally will share if I'm aware of any, stores or places that pick up any works. Now, again, some places, as I mentioned, some smaller shops and things, they totally, shelve some works that don't have, an ISBN on them. They do, but it's very few, that I've seen. So you just want to keep that in mind. And, I don't know, if... who knows, 20, 30, 40 years from now, what, the whole world looks like in terms of like the Ingram network and ISBNs and all of that stuff, Things evolve, processes change in the publication space. I don't know. I know some publishers, they just use a QR code, one of those QR codes that links back to the site or some other page or something else, or they put QR codes across their issue. And that's all they do, and they distribute it just from their site. They don't do any distribution. They don't, do anything like that. They just, give it to contributors and things like that, or offer a discount, to it. So, yeah. So, yeah, so there are some, probably some other videos you can watch on YouTube, some other authors sharing their experiences, how they got into physical locations in terms of bookshops. I, again, don't have experience on every single thing in the world. No one does. I'm not an expert or anything, but I hope this helped you a little bit. Definitely recommend, don't be afraid to just start emailing, looking up contact addresses of bookshops, emailing them, saying, hey, this is, my publication. It's in the Ingram network. If it, make sure it is, before contacting them, and, tell them what it's about, and, inquire. I ended up sending some sample photos and a preview link, or, full flip through of some issues and things in the past. So, yeah, that was before they were cleaned up, though. So, yeah, afterwards, I ended up cleaning them up a little bit, just adding spine text, aligning a few things interior-wise. But, yeah, I think spine text helps bookshops and places, not all publications. If your publication is thinner, right? I'm getting the spine text here, sorry. But, if your publication's thinner on the thin side and it's a zine, or, it doesn't have spine text, it's not the end of the world. There are a lot of books in magazines that don't have spine text. But preferably, if it's a thicker publication, you probably want to add spine text. It helps, when they're, looking at things on the shelves, organizing, arranging things, if you ever get in a shop. Obviously it could be face forward too, but it always helps to have that, I think, series that have thicker, page volumes and things like that. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to share in terms of bookshops. I hope this helped you a little bit. Sorry I couldn't be more helpful in terms of, how to succeed in getting into a bookshop. And success, that's something else I'm going to cover in the next episode, by the way. So tune into that, and I got to go, but I will cover that a little bit later on.